Hello, everyone. Nate here with a quick heads up. As you probably know, we have a Patreon. We've been doing it since 2016. $5 a month gets you all the bonus content we've published ever since then. However, this month we're also selling a trans rights AK-47 enamel pin on our store, and every $5 from the sales of those pins goes to Trans Lifeline. So if that sounds like something you want, those pins are available and you will be helping a great charity. Thanks so much and enjoy the show.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. You got me, you got Nate. Nate, how are things going? We're in September now. We're coming into the winter of our discontent. How you feeling? How's your basil doing?
Well, one of them got knocked down by the wind. You know, it turned into a parachute, got captured by big gusts because we actually had a sort of extratropical cyclone kind of thing hit us. And I mean, it wasn't like a big rainstorm by the time that it hit us, but we had, 45 mile an hour wind gusts. And unfortunately, my big, huge, almost like ostentatiously tall basil plant, like I said, turned into a parachute, just captured all that wind and got completely uprooted. So I replanted it, but it wasn't doing super hot. And I was like, well, it's just going to wind up withering and having problems with just kind of getting gross. So why don't I just do it now and take it? So harvested it, made it into a great big thing of pesto, super concentrated pesto. So you take like a teaspoon of the pesto and mix it with olive oil and put it on pasta. It's incredible. Turned out amazing. I also made some couscous with it, like use it to season some couscous. Other ones still doing great. Gonna harvest it before it gets too cold, although I might let it go to seed. I don't know. We'll see. Managed to, when it was really hot, managed to sprout some cilantro, which is doing okay. However, it is officially fall, which may sound crazy to people in America, but I'm telling you, it's in the 40s at night in Fahrenheit. It's in the low 60s in the daytime. It feels like fall already. When it hits September 1st in this country, it's like a switch flips. And it's just, nope, we're fall now. That's how it's going to be. So I am wearing a nice warm sweater and some jeans in the house. The windows are all cold, the windows are all closed because it's fucking cold. It's wild, man. It is not like early September that I remember from living in Indiana or in New York.
Yeah, it's still humid here, which is fine by me because I fucking hate the cold. Like I fear fall because I know winter comes after fall, and I hate the winter, especially now that I have to walk a dog 3 times a day. So that's going to be just so much fun. And she's a Pyrenees, so of course she fucking loves the cold weather, and I don't, because I'm not covered in fat and body hair. Well, actually I am, but not as much.
Sort
as
of, but not to the extent of a Pyrenees. Yeah, considering that like a big Great Pyrenees is basically like approaching to the 80th to 90th percentile of a healthy adult's weight. So they're such massive dogs. We don't really get a cold winter here. We don't really get a hot summer. We did have a week where it was hot here, but it didn't last that long. And I'm just, honestly, man, the thing about the weather here that gets me is that like it's basically permanently spring or permanently fall. I've told you about that before. It's always just a little chilly. And the dark in the wintertime just kills me. So that I think as we go through multiple years, you get more accustomed to it. But I mean, dude,
it's a good
thing.
We're
coming up on it. In 3 months, it will literally be the sun will be setting before 4 p.m. And I will just be in hell.
It's a good thing that like this is why England had to ban guns, because people would just kill themselves. I know I would.
Actually, the reason England banned guns is because a pedophile scoutmaster shot up a kindergarten. I'm not kidding.
Well, I mean,
a guy in Scotland.
That's also a good reason.
I'm furious that I am having my access to small children restricted. Went into a school and shot it up. It was a Dunblane massacre, and that led to the restriction of gun ownership in the UK, which was never anywhere near as extensive as it is in America. But yeah, now guns are super tightly controlled because they had a school shooting. And I think if you know anything about the British Isles, the idea of the person doing it being a furiously stymied child abuser sounds like it's just like typecast. Like just absolutely too on the nose for the British Isles. So yeah, It's not good. But we don't have guns. If we did have guns, we'd have more mass shootings in America. That I believe with all my heart. Yikes.
Yeah, you guys have a real just a real racism problem there, that it feels like the best way that people want to deal with it is through violence. I don't know. It'd be interesting to just give the guns back to England and see how they operate after that. If every chav goes out and just buys a pistol and ends up, shooting their moms and their significant others or whatever, or if it would just be like, they would be very British about it and, get really long punt guns and incredibly ornate revolvers and just have a day with it.
I mean, I don't necessarily think it's the chavs that I'd be worried about, which, I mean, that's kind of a discourse that we probably shouldn't wade into, because even though I live here, I'm not from here. And so like there's a whole lot of stuff around it that is just, you can come across as being really ignorant and reductive, because obviously like it's basically an opportunity for rich assholes to make fun of working class people. But I do think that the biggest thing with me is that, like, Hussein went to the studio yesterday, and the route he takes to go to the studio, he has to take the Docklands Light Railway, and which is sort of like a joke fake train built by Thatcher. But he had to take that and get off at Shadwell in south of Whitechapel, and then walk through Watney Market to get to the studio. And so in Watney Market, it's almost all Bengali vendors and stalls, but there is what we call the EDL pub. There's this old pub with St. George's crosses all over it, and it's just the Baz pub. Like Baz and Gaz go down there to get loaded every day. And he said at like 2 p.m, there was bald, fat dudes shirtless fighting and stabbing each other with broken glass from a bar fight. And all the Bengali dads are just standing around drinking tea like, what the fuck, whatever, white people doing their thing. Like, I think when I make the joke about violence in the UK, about like that there would be more gun violence here than in America, the mass shooting aspect is part of it, I think, because there's enough people who are unhinged. But I think more than anything else, it would just be people shooting each other up after drinking 16 pints and arguing over whether Millwall is the best football club or not. Like, it's just the level of casual violence you will experience here if you're out in a place where people consume alcohol. It's just, it's shocking if you're not used to it.
My wife and I were talking about Epcot. Epcot has all of the countries in the World Showcase and everything, and all of the countries have some. They have restaurants, they have shops, but they also have like some sort of cultural thing. So in China, they have a recreation of the Terracotta Warriors. Japan has a huge shop of Japanese stuff and Japanese cultural stuff. Morocco has, Moroccan, all kinds of great stuff. England is literally a giant twinning shop with where you can buy soccer hooligan stuff. And like it's a big shop that like it's all connected, but as you go through, it's just like, and here's the Irish shit, and here's the Welsh shit, and a pub, and that's it. There's no cultural stuff in the England thing, and it's like England is, I mean, arguably, of current countries that we have, one of the most culturally significant countries, whether good or bad. It still has been around for a long time and shaped the world in ways that we cannot imagine. And yet Epcot is just like, yeah, there's where you can get drunk and there's where you can buy your shit from England. Keep moving. Canada's way better. They got a whole like 360 thing movie that's narrated by Martin Short. It's great. But, get your beer here and then go to Canada.
One of the things that's funny about London is that it's actually become like a really big place for getting what you would describe as boutique coffee. Coffee culture here is a really huge thing, and there's coffee shops everywhere, and it's all quite good. I mean, the quality of coffee is incredible. And one of the reasons I think that coffee is just bigger of a thing here is that there's not as much weird twee affectation around coffee as there is around tea. And also making tea the sort of correct way, if you will, using a teapot and stuff. Like, people don't really do that anymore. They just use tea bags. And so, like, although tea is super affiliated with sort of this idea of Britishness, honestly, most people don't make pots of tea. Most people don't have any kind of, there isn't anywhere near as much of the sort of ritual around it as there is in even in other Anglophone countries that kind of clung to those traditions longer. But coffee is like a huge thing. Coffee is a huge thing here, and it's weird to me that people like that's a thing that people don't really associate it with. But I feel like if you look at the numbers, Britain is not the world's biggest consumer of tea in any capacity, or even per capita. But coffee, they're probably higher up in terms of just the sheer volume of coffee that people drink versus tea. But you can get tea anywhere. That's the thing that's so strange about it. But I think I've had tea in a pot, like served in a pot once in the time that I've been here. And it was in the fancy-ish lobby restaurant at the Marriott in Swiss Cottage, which is in Northwest London, when we were staying here to go pick up Cynthia's biometric permit in 2017. Like, yeah, it's weird. It's just not a thing.
It's not like the Afghans who, like, as soon as 4 Afghans, stop for longer than 5 minutes, a small fire and a teapot are produced, and you're having
dude,
some
Afghan
chai.
tea culture rules so fucking hard, dude. They make green tea stronger than any coffee I've ever had in my life. It's incredible. I absolutely, and also like the waste not, want not aspect of it, where it's like, here, we're having tea. You're drinking out of, we're brewing it in a thermos that looks like it was rolled down a hill into a volcano. We're going to drink it out of whatever glass, anything we can get our hands on. Like, oh, that was a mustard jar. Oh, that was like preserved mushrooms from Poland. Doesn't matter. We're drinking out of it. Still has a label on. Doesn't matter. It's like, oh, you guys want sugar? I have this like 1 liter bottle that used to hold like an industrial amount of aspirin. We're gonna shake sugar out of this thing. Like, dude, I love the shit out of that stuff. That is so incredible to me. Like, if I don't know. I mean, that's the thing where I'm just that, and also there's something like, because that's Shin chai. That's green tea. Tor chai, like when they make black tea, they'll make a pot, like the kettle that they're boiling the water in. They'll dump black tea into it. They'll dump sweetened condensed milk, and you just pour it straight out of the pot. And just, you always have to have a cigarette with it. Mm-hmm. And it's just, dude, I love the shit out of that.
You gotta squat down. You gotta smoke your cigarette. You gotta have a cigarette in one hand and your little saucer with your tiny glass. That's what we got served, I think, in Iraq one time. These small glasses that were like probably about the size of maybe 2 shot glasses, so about a 2 ounce.
Yep.
And it had like sugar packed into the bottom of it.
Yep.
So you just pour it in, and then while it cools, you're supposed to pour it and let it cool. And while it cools, the sugar dissolves into it, and then you sit there and you sip on it. And I'm sitting there just like, I'm in obviously a war zone. This is, play a lot of death and destruction. I'm just like, I have never seen tea so well done in my entire life. Why is America so behind on this? What is our garbage with a Lipton bag and everything? And I've never been able to recreate it. I've never been able to, find, how do I do this? Is there some sort of like sugar glue you pack into the bottom of this? What's going on? Because they have so if you want tea, go to the Mideast, because everybody at any point in time, like I said, if you stop for longer than 5 minutes, somebody's got tea going.
Yeah, I mean, I know we got to transition to the actual topic of this episode, but I would say, honestly, Francis, if you have Turkish restaurants in St. Louis, I have never been to Iraq, and I never had tea when I was in Kuwait or the UAE, but I did have tea a lot in Turkey, and that's the exact way that they serve it. They bring out like a ceramic saucer, a glass that looks like a small flower vase with like a little like a gold foil rim on the top of it, and it's like ultra strong black tea with like you said, like a half inch of sugar in the bottom of it, and yeah, it's like, it's 100 degrees outside, and I'm drinking like 160-degree glass of tea and just fucking banging down cigarettes while I'm at it. Like, yeah, it's an incredible experience. But who probably won't get to experience that? Idiots who get kicked out of the army for being fucking racist on TikTok. Weird how that happens. Now, don't get me wrong. It's probably good that they aren't going to go to the Middle East and experience it, because the army it should not be seen as a vehicle for tourism to these countries. And B, I wouldn't want people who are this much of dumbasses to have any sort of authority and be in a position where they can affect the lives of people overseas. So in that regard, it is good that this happened to this guy. However, we want to talk about an army lieutenant, second lieutenant, with 3 million TikTok followers, who decided to make a Holocaust gas chamber / incinerator joke on TikTok and got his ass handed to him in record time by the 18th Airborne Corps. So, Francis, do you want to bring us up to speed on this?
So this is one of those things where I actually got to watch the evolution from the very beginning. I saw Paul Serolda, at the editor-in-chief at Task and Purpose. I was dicking around on Twitter, and I saw when he posted the video, and I quote tweeted it, and I liked it, and just kind of threw it. I was like, oh, this should be fun. Dumbass lieutenant makes Holocaust joke. I made a joke about him being a dumbass and then tweeted it out to the world. And, it's so when you get to watch from the very beginning, when you see the evolution of this thing as it spreads across military Twitter and as it spreads into non-military areas, when you start to see like the different fingers come in of people who's like, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, you shouldn't, destroy this guy's career. Oh, you shouldn't do this, that, and the other thing. It was wonderful. It was wonderful to be there from the ground. So it's very exciting for me. Nathan Freehofer, that fucking name. Okay, so Nathan Freehofer, second lieutenant, boot fuck ass soldier, Northern Kentucky University grad in biology. Went through ROTC. He's been around on TikTok and Instagram for a while, and it's weird to see. I was scrolling through his Instagram, and it goes back to when he was in high school, and I think oh geez, his Instagram goes back so far, but that's really for him. It's only 5 years. My Facebook goes back twice as long as that.
Yeah.
So,
oh wow, that's weird because when you said Northern Kentucky University, I would have assumed that he would have that he was a junior enlisted guy. But then I thought about it, and I was like, oh no, that would be Austin P or something like Southern Kentucky, because oftentimes when people have degrees from random Kentucky universities and did ROTC, it's because they were at Fort Campbell and then they commissioned. But yeah, that wouldn't make sense. So if he's 23 years old.
Right. So he somehow before his military career, when he was in ROTC just when he was just doing his college stuff, he had the quintessential upper middle class white dude college experience where it's a bunch of pictures of him smiling with a bunch of other guys, drinking beer, having fun, doing as you do. And so somehow he managed to amass about 3 million followers on TikTok, because he had, you go viral on TikTok. It's on Twitter, you go viral and nobody follows you. You go viral on TikTok and everybody's just oh, I wonder what he's going to do next. So everybody follows you there. So Nathan, for some fucking unknown reason, decides to go onto TikTok and make a Holocaust joke. And it was one of those, it's not even that funny of a Holocaust joke. It's a really lazy one. I've certainly heard worse. And it's not so much the Holocaust joke is bad. As at the age of 37, I understand that humor is lazy and unnecessary. And generally, when I hear that, I just roll my eyes and move on, because whoever's doing it is trying to get a rise out of you. But this has you've got the Holocaust joke. You've got him saying that you shouldn't be offended, and if you're offended, you're a pussy, for some unknown reason. And then you've got I'm a social media star of some kind, and he does fitness stuff. He does quote comedy unquote, as he calls it. So he went on, he made a Holocaust joke. He said, you don't get to be upset about it. If you're upset about it, you're a huge pussy. Stop being offended by things.
And we should clarify that the joke he made was really lame and stupid. I mean, I don't like Holocaust jokes at all. I don't feel like there's much humor to be had in something like that. And I mean, obviously people like Mel Brooks have managed to find ways to make fun of Hitler and the Holocaust and the persecution of the Jews. I feel like I can give Mel Brooks a pass. One of the most famous comedians ever, really successful, really funny guy. Also fought in the army in World War II in the European theater of operations. So in a way,
isn't he Jewish too?
Yes, he's Jewish. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where I feel as though I forgot to mention Mel Brooks is Jewish, because it's so implied that if you know anything about Mel Brooks, you know that Mel Brooks is Jewish, because literally every single one of his comedy things involves piss takes on Judaism. So yeah, but the joke that Nathan Freehofer made was, what are Jewish people's favorite Pokemon? Ash.
Which one doesn't make any sense, because Ash is not a Pokemon.
He's not a fucking
trailer.
Pokemon. God, he's a trainer. He's not a Pokemon. What's wrong with you? Anyway, so yes, this happened, and lame, stupid joke for a topic you shouldn't be joking about to begin with, and did it on TikTok to 3 million people, and is now getting his ass handed to him.
He is a lieutenant. He's a second lieutenant in the Army. And I get, I don't know. Maybe it's when you're a slave in the content mines, even if you put yourself in those content mines and made yourself the slave, because, I got to have the TikTok. I got to do it for the gram. I got to do it for TikTok. I got to do it for the tweets. maybe you feel like you have to keep pushing the envelope. I don't understand. I don't know. Like, maybe, when I was a teen and when I was in my early 20s, people made off color jokes to get, a rise out of people or to purposely be offensive. Sure. And absolutely any one of us would have been canceled back then. But also we weren't recording ourselves saying a bunch of dumb shit. We weren't putting it out there on purpose, and we weren't like, I don't know. I just really want to know, like, when he decided to do this, what exactly was where did he think that this was going? And I'm glad to say, look, Nate, we bag on the Army constantly here. The Army is not a great institution. It's racist. It's sexist. More than likely, you will go in, you will come out broken, either mentally or physically or psychologically in some way, shape, or form. However, it is nice to see the Army kind of like all get together to stomp out a dipshit lieutenant. It does fill my heart with a little bit of hope to watch this happen. Because, go ahead.
I want to specify something for our non-military listeners, and that is one of the strange dynamics of the officer and enlisted rank system, and the fact that it's a holdover from basically aristocratic lords of the olden day, and the fact that it's the way that it's structured in militaries around the world, because this is the system that pretty much everyone uses. Is that if you are a second lieutenant, you are the junior most rank you can be as an officer, right? That table stakes, we get that. But what you have to understand is that the junior most officer still outranks the senior most enlisted or warrant officer in the Army, which is to say that Lieutenant Freihofer here would outrank the command sergeant major of the Army and whatever the chief of the warrant officer corps is, like a CW5 who's just has like a walrus mustache and just smokes 40 Winstons a day, has been in the Army for like 50 years. He still has to call Lieutenant Freihofer sir and salute him and be more or less deferential to him, although obviously there are limits, of course. Point being here that the reason why I think people are more than willing to crush a second lieutenant is because I think the existence of second lieutenants brings with it a certain level of kind of built-in discontent and morale killing, in the sense that as a second lieutenant, you know very little about the military. You know what you've been taught, and obviously there's certain expectations of you as an officer from day one that, are not the same expectations, which is not to say that I don't want to downplay the expectations of a junior enlisted soldier. What I'm trying to say is that the expectations of a private and the expectations of a second lieutenant are very different, and they are not necessarily interchangeable. I don't think that I would say most privates probably wouldn't handle some of the aspects of being a second lieutenant very well. I'm very certain that most second lieutenants would not handle the aspects of being a private very well, if that makes sense. But the point being here is that this, on top of just the utter stupidity and just like, dumb, bad taste trolling shit that he was doing, there's also the fact that this guy is the rank that is probably the most offensive to the soul of the entire Army. And I say that as a former second lieutenant because I was an officer. And the one point I would make before I hand it back to you is to say, I also think that we are surprised as civilians, as veterans, as military, perhaps, that they came down so hard and so instantaneously. But I think the reason, the sad thing is that the reason why we're surprised is that even if you handed any police force in America, any law enforcement agency in America, this much of a just obvious fucking alley-oop, just easy shot to make, like, hey, here's a dumbass being a fucking dumbass, doing a thing you told him not to do publicly in the most blatantly obvious way possible. Do something about it. Make people think your organization has fucking standards. What would cops do? They'd thin blue line that shit. They wouldn't do fucking dog shit about it. And so, does that make the Army better? Yeah. But I think that the Army, at least, is in a position where it is more important that they do PR for themselves than protect the fifis of a goddamn idiot second lieutenant. And cops exist to protect the gang, so any member of the gang is important.
Yeah, and let's not, forget that if this was a joke that the second lieutenant made, like sitting around with a bunch of other second lieutenants, or just, you know, bullshitting maybe with some sergeants or something. You know, if he was just hanging out and, you know, cracked this joke, likely somebody would be like, "Sir, Ash isn't even a fucking Pokemon. What the fuck are you talking about? Shut the fuck up, sir." And then we'd just move, everybody would move on. The audacity and the gall of putting it on video and then putting it out and blasting it to 3 million people is why this person got into trouble. His racism didn't get him in trouble. I mean, it did because he put it out there, but like, you can be racist in the Army, as Nate and I have talked about, you know, multiple times. Right-wing reactionary is the default politics of your average soldier, and for the most part,
I knew a guy that fucking yelled the N-word drunk out of his mind during a fucking battalion ball, and like, he did get a substantiated EO complaint, but it didn't really damage his career. I mean, he was a junior, or he's a staff sergeant. I mean, I remember doing this sort of like a surprise training thing with my battalion, and where they basically faked this out like we were doing 2 days on the range just doing marksmanship, and they went up doing like a little mini ranger school thing, which it was great training, don't get me wrong, but it was a huge break off because it was, you know, October in Alaska, and we're just climbing up and down hills, so it was really cold and shitty. And when we got in the patrol base, we probably got about 3 hours of sleep that night. And we were setting up security and setting up a rotation. And one of the I want to say the second lieutenants or first lieutenants that I was sort of nominally managing when we were doing this, because it was sort of like mini Ranger School platoons, this guy was like, "Yeah, they're putting us up on watch. I don't know if they're just going to try and fucking chew us out of sleep." And I was just like, "Dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army. How in the fuck are you going to say that shit?" And there was a sort of like, "Oh, why are you being a buzzkill?" And I'm just like, bro, like, what the fuck is your problem? And yeah, I mean, you can imagine me as a person with both Christian and Jewish background. I'm just sort of like,
right?
Why would you fucking say that? And yeah, that's the. And the fact is that guy felt like that's a thing you say in a moment like that. And if people want to be like, "Oh, well, you know, these yokel National Guard rednecks, etc." It's like, no, dude, this guy was active duty, and I'm pretty sure he was a West Point grad.
Yeah, and like we said, that's the default. And you know, a lot of that stuff needs to be, you know, programmed out of people. It is something that I've been trying to deprogram out of my brain, is to say somebody gypped me, because obviously, you know, Roma, gypsies, and everything. That's it falls into the same category of just like, it's a thing that you say because you've heard other people say it, but it's got, you know, these racist connotations. And in America, it's not that big of a deal, but in you know, Europe, it's more of a thing. And you know, you get plenty of people saying like, "Oh, well, this teaches you what you should or shouldn't be saying on your social media. You know, the think before you post." It's like, no, he shouldn't be saying that regardless. Like, the problem isn't, you know, shut up and sit down and keep your racism to yourself. It's that you shouldn't have the racism. And of course, you know, the Army is they're going to completely miss that messaging, I'm sure. It's going to, all the safety briefing. And when I say the Army, I don't mean big Army, you know, your 4 stars and your sergeant majors of the Army, sergeants major of the Army. It's, you know, it's going to be the captain, it's going to be the lieutenant, it's going to be the sergeant giving the safety brief at the, you know, before Labor Day weekend, and it's going to say, and it's going to be a safety brief. It's going to be, if any of you dipshits decide to go on Facebook Live or whatever and say some racist shit, don't do it. Keep it to yourself. And it's not going to be, don't be racist. And if you have some racist shit to say, I will wall-to-wall counsel you. I'll push your face through a wall. I will do these things to you to make you unracist. And if you continue to be racist, I will get you out of the Army. It's never going to be that. It's always going to be, stop getting us into trouble with your stupidity. And I don't know, maybe that is progress. Maybe it is progress to say, like, look, just sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up. And people will yell at you if you say some dumb shit. And then maybe eventually the dumb shit kind of works its way out of your own brain because you're no longer saying it because everybody smacks you upside the head when you say it.
Yeah, I remember seeing there was this account that got, of course, mass reported by Chuds and shut down, but the accidentally left-wing account on Twitter, yeah. Where people would say things and they're sort of like, well, hypothetically speaking, with your dumb logic, blah, blah, blah. They'd say something that was like, you know, maybe healthcare should be free. Well, should food and housing be free too? It's like, weird how that works. And this kind of thing happens often when people will talk about this and they'll be like, oh, well, if the boys can't sit around and crack jokes about racism and sexism and misogyny, then how do we expect them to kill folks downrange? And it's like, So what you're saying is, in order to be inoculated to the psychological effects of killing people in combat, Does that mean you have to dehumanize people? I see where you're getting there. And that realization never seems to want to come with these people. And so there's an extent to which I feel like I don't want to take the high road and say, this is, I would never. Because, I mean, the thing about it is that even if I tried to, I grew up in the Midwest where this kind of shit happened all the time. I had the perspective of being someone who was sometimes the butt of the joke because of my religious background, but not that much. I mean, because like I said, my last name isn't identifiably Jewish. And I mean, of course, famously, the people who seem to be really, really good at figuring out whether or not you have any Jewish background are fellow Jews and Nazis. And when I was in 8th grade, a kid in my school was basically DMing me or on AOL message saying like, we're gonna send you to Auschwitz. Like, he was enough of a white supremacist to be like, hell doesn't exist for Jews, so we have to send you to Auschwitz instead, which is a pretty fucked up thing to say when you're 14, but also like, weird grasp of Jewish theology there for being a fucking Nazi.
Yeah, I've read the Torah, bitch.
Yeah, and I didn't know what to say or to do about this, and I actually told my teacher, who basically tried to fucking get me to convert to evangelical Christianity when I told him. Like, so I mean, that's the sort of thing where it's like, oh, be one of the guys, you got to be in on the joke. Like, you know, I've been in the environment where people are making the jokes, and I've been in the environment where I've been the butt of the jokes. And so in that regard, like, I don't want to pretend that this stuff, because I would say for any white people in America, I feel as though you are really writing a check your ass can't cash if you're saying that you have never either said it or been around it and not pushed back. Some people absolutely are 100% rock solid, but like most people have been around it. And even if they don't personally, like when they go home to like their Mima's fucking family Thanksgiving, they're around it. And so I feel like the extent to which people are steeped in this shit, to me, it's not a question of like, fire this guy, shoot him into the sun. It's more, make an example out of him, not to, you know, put him in the stocks. I mean, do that, but also use it as an opportunity to talk about how people are so inured to common everyday prejudices from the shit they grew up with and the shit that's like organizational culture, especially when you look at like combat arms units, and start talking about, why do we think this is funny? Why do we think this is okay? You know, I'm gonna forgive me for having to use some slurs here. You know, why is it okay that, you know, in 2010, 2011, at the point where the military has already stopped prosecuting people under Don't Ask, Don't Tell and was in the process of repealing it. You know, I'm in a meeting with my battalion commander in S3 or something, and he's like, you know, the staff captains need to do something, and he looks over to the staff captain. He's like, do all you gay faggots have that written down? I mean, I'm dead serious. A dude said that. A major said this. You know, like that level of just normalizing it is the thing that we need to combat. And I don't think absolutely make an example of somebody in the sense of saying we will not tolerate it. But I think the big jumping off point for me is that if you're white and you grew up in America or in Europe or anywhere, really, you've been around this shit. And the point isn't to say, okay, this person has said it, so we're setting them on fire. It's more, this person has said it, it's fucking wrong and unacceptable. Let's talk about why they thought it was okay to say. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
And how much you want to bet? How much you want to fucking bet that like this guy is gonna come out and it's gonna be one of two things. Either he's gonna do like an apology thing where they obligate some fucking poor rabbi to like talk to him to educate him, or he's gonna lean into the Nazi shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be one or the other. It's either going to be like awkwardly standing on stage to make an apology with like a bunch of rabbis behind him for some reason, which is a thing they do to black people. Oh my God, all the time. Like when a white person says something racist, like invariably they do like a fucking PR event where it's like, oh, I realized the error of my ways and I want to apologize. And he's obligating like black community leaders to be there with him. Like that kind of shit happens. So it's either going to be that or he's just going to go like full Kekistani.
I don't think, you know, just going through his Instagram, he is very white bread. He's got a picture of him and a bunch of other soldiers in uniform holding a Barstool Sports Saturday is for the boys flag.
God. Ah!
He does, and he's got a lot of. I mean, it seems like he really enjoyed being a soldier. It looks like he really comes from money because he went to Germany and he went to Norway to do training with German soldiers and Norwegian soldiers while he was in ROTC and everything. And nothing about him. Like, if you look at it, you're like, he's probably like that normal amount of young white dude, rich racist. Whereas, like, they're racist, but they're not like. There's always the chance that they're probably like a person that, like the person that puts the Black Lives Matter sign out on their front yard, but still calls the cops because a black person that they don't recognize is walking through the alley, that kind of racist. And that's what he seems. So I don't really think like just the vibe from his Instagram and from watching the couple of things that he has on his YouTube. I don't get that vibe from him. I am very interested to see what he's going to do because it seems like he comes from. I couldn't find his parents, so his parents probably aren't famous in their own way. He certainly is just viral because of his own virility, and that's probably where he fucked up. He's got no mentor, nobody to say, "Hey, don't make Holocaust jokes on TikTok," and then call people a pussy for being offended by it. So it's I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to be interested to see, like, because he could go full right wing and start, badgering, adding Donald Trump on Twitter and just being like, give me, get this Gomar off of my records, or get, I deserve to be a second lieutenant or whatever. And I don't know, like, and you see plenty of people saying like, oh, I can't believe we're going to ruin this kid's life over this. And it's like, he's 22, his life, or 23, his life's not ruined. Like, we're all going to forget about this kid in like four weeks or so. Nobody's going to remember him. We're going to be occasionally we're going to be like, remember that one shitty troop, and everybody's going to say which one. And we're like, the one that one on TikTok, like which one? Like the one on TikTok that was racist. Which one? Narrow it down. The Holocaust joke lieutenant. Yes, I remember that guy. Because of course, like, this shit's going to continue to happen and continue to be a problem for the military. So his life's not ruined. This is a brief blip where he's going to get yelled at a bunch, and then in 6 months he's going to be fine. Maybe he'll, get a job in his dad's factory or something. I don't know, but. Do
you think that his alma mater's ROTC program is going to get like 10,000 letters from Vietnam hat granddads the way that West Point did because Spencer Rapone said communism will win?
Probably not.
Probably not. Why do you think that is? How could that be? I mean, really, I have zero object permanence, and I've lived in a gunny sack my entire life. I just don't understand how this works.
I absolutely love that Spencer got kicked out of the Army, not for being a communist, because that's not illegal, but because he said officers have smooth brains. So
I mean, he also said that the Secretary of Defense wants to fuck the Budweiser Clydesdales,
sure.
Which was an amazing joke. I mean, Spencer and I are planning on doing an interview not too long from now. He's continued on in his studies. He's left culture shit and posting behind. I'm incredibly proud of him, the progress he's made, and everything he's doing in his life. I will pour one out for a real one because while I deeply, deeply respect his intellectual commitments and how serious he takes his studies, I also have to say I will miss his posting because his posting was so fucking incredible. But
he was on another level. And look, if you're going to get kicked out of the Army for some shit, let it be because you said the Secretary of Defense wants to fuck a horse. Not because you said something racist. Because
yes, exactly.
That's the only thing that people is like.
Because it's punching down on fucking Holocaust victims. What kind of fucked up shit is that? Like, what kind of just nightmare, like just cruel and unbelievably callous shit have you got to do to be like, these people who who like millions of people were killed, even more were fucking persecuted and imprisoned and tortured. Like entire cultures of people were uprooted. Countries that had historical Jewish communities for hundreds of years now have basically none. All this shit, you're gonna make fun of them for that? Like, no, make fun of the fucking the Exxon CEO guy saying he wants to fuck a horse. That's at least punching up.
Yeah.
And that's punching up,
and it's funny. It's a lot funnier too, and that's you go for the crude shock humor joke. You're gonna get two kinds of things. You're gonna get a lot of dumbasses who think it's funny, and then you're gonna get a lot of people who misunderstand the Constitution, saying, "Well, that's just right," as the First Amendment states. And it's like, no, that's not. The First Amendment doesn't state that you can be dumb and racist and not get kicked out of the Army. As it turns out, we have our own laws and rules, and you are subjected to them. And if you're gonna be dumb, man, fuck it. We don't need you. We got plenty of dumb people who skate by on a daily basis in the military and don't get kicked out for the stupid racist, god awful shit they say. Let this guy be a lesson.
Do you really think? Yeah, it's like exactly. It's like, do you really think that oh, how are we ever going to replace a second lieutenant who's in really good shape and has questionable judgment? I've never heard of that happening before.
Oh no, a field artillery officer. Where are we going to find those? Jesus Christ.
Oh, he was a fucking field
artillery.
Leg. Ah, King of Battle. There you go, King of Battle. Great decisions, Great decision. He if he exercised this poor judgment on TikTok, imagine the level of judgment he's going to exercise next time he's running a fire mission. Oh wait, you probably wouldn't want him running a fire mission. You'd have an NCO do it instead. It's the way it works.
I want a lieutenant who's going to write on the side of a shell, "This is for the Saturday is for the boys," and send it down range, and then it accidentally blows my dick off because he's not listening to his forward observers.
Exactly. I want a lieutenant who's so into fucking fitness that he's doing burpees on the gun line and then mistakenly, just like with like his flailing leg with his bizarre burpee form, accidentally pulls the lanyard and fires a 155 round when the barrel is pointed in the absolute wrong direction. That is the kind of guy that I think is going to be set up for success for a long and productive military career. Oh, but instead he had to blow it by punching down, dude. If you just punch up, if you just find someone to punch up at, it's okay. Unfortunately, you are in a really hierarchical and completely rights-free organization, so sucks to be you. And sucks to be us to have to watch your really unfunny jokes too, which
all this nonsense about he's got the freedom, he should have the freedoms. Like, he signed a piece of paper, man. You ain't got shit in the Army. When you put that uniform on, you're subjected to a lot of fucking rules that you apparently were not paying attention to. And while yes, sometimes those rules and laws get kind of hand waved away, and we can do war crimes. Just understand. Sometimes, while it's 9 out of 10 times you get away with it, there's always that one time. And especially don't blast it out to 3 million TikTok fans. Like, you could put that on TikTok to your 5 fans or whatever, and nobody's going to give a fuck, and you won't get canceled because you got 5 people who all scrolled right past you because they're probably porn bots anyway. But when you got 3 million, nah, man, keep that shit. Keep your fucking mouth shut. Again, just keep your mouth shut. And don't say stupid stuff. But that's like asking a private not to get drunk. Asking a second lieutenant not to do some stupid shit. It's just going to happen. It's in their nature, and it's not their fault. I've known plenty of second lieutenants who know how to shut up and listen to me and listen to their the sergeants around them and just shut up and learn from us, and we'll teach you some things. But then I guarantee you this Nathan Freihofer, which also, if you got a fucking last name like that, maybe not say some Nazi shit. This is the kind of guy who would probably go in and not shut the fuck up because look at my hair, look at my abs. Also, I have 3 million TikTok followers. Who exactly are you? And it's like, I'm the guy who's survived a couple of wars and is going to show you how to use a fucking radio, you dumbass. Sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up.
I'm trying to think of the dumbest things that I've seen second lieutenants do. And I've seen a lot of really dumb shit. I made it when I was a second lieutenant. One time I was trying to dial out to call somebody on Fort Richardson and accidentally dialed 911. But then one of my NCOs came into the office and I was just like, we were talking and the phone rang and I just hung it back up. And that was them calling back asking why I called 911. And I didn't realize it until ambulances and fire trucks showed up at the building. So that was my dumb mistake as a second lieutenant. But I've heard of stories of guys trying to strong arm and rip the asshole of range control because they're civilians, not realizing that is not something you want to do. Let put it this way: range control are the people who control whether you get to do training on ranges, and if you try to be a dick to them, they're all retired sergeant majors and first sergeants, and they have every single senior NCO and to some extent officer in their pocket in some way, and they can just shut down training because they feel like it. So for any of you out there who might be in a position to call range control and yell at them and be a dumbass, do not do this. It will always go bad for you. Your best approach, your best course of action is to always be super, super nice with the range control people, because then you'll get what you want with them. If they think you're a good one, then they'll be cool with you. Maybe. They might also just be dicks to you. So I also want to point out, though, that when it comes to people like this, I think in general, lieutenants have to learn by making mistakes. And the thing about it is privates also learn by making mistakes. But privates, you expect it. And privates, like, a fuck up private is a fuck up private. Like, you can, unless it's a really bad fuck up, you can keep it within the team or within the squad. You know what I mean? Maybe go up to platoon level. But, like, the platoon leader and platoon sergeant can handle it. Like, platoon sergeant and his NCOs can handle it. Like, you don't want to have the commander and the first sergeant involved. Like, I'm looking at this from a captain's perspective. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to have to know about it. I don't want to have to answer questions about it. I don't want to have anyone calling me at 3 a.m. on a fucking Saturday to talk to me about it. I don't want to know about it. And so, like, when a private fucks up, it's a thing that you can normally, train it out of them. Whereas when a lieutenant fucks up, like, there's not that many lieutenants in a battalion. There's like 45 officers in a battalion, thereabouts. I mean, like, there's just not that many of us. And so it's obviously a bigger deal. You learn by fucking up. But once again, like, you want to keep it in the shop. You want to keep it within the company, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Don't blast your stuff out beyond that. The craziest thing, I didn't have a second lieutenant. I had a first lieutenant try to pull some shit on me. A first lieutenant who, I don't know if they were ranger or what, but we were out in a field in Fort McCoy, and these guys came through. We'd set up an ECP, entry control point, and this was just, it was all training. So, setting up living on a fob, set up an ECP, do this, that, and the other thing. We had, range people out there. And I was hanging out on the ECP because I had nothing better to do other than, sit out there and, drink Gatorade and smoke cigarettes and bullshit with people. And these two first lieutenants tried to blow through they come up on our ECP because they were trying to go through to scout some range that was beyond us. And I was like, oh, well, you got to just, show us your cat cards and we'll be fine. We just got to get, it's training, sir. Come on, show us your cards. And they got all like uppity about it and everything. And they tried to just like blow our ECP until I stood right in front of their vehicle. And I looked to one of the E4s and I said, why don't you run on back and go get our O6 to come on out here and talk to these lieutenants for them? Because apparently they're not going to listen to a staff sergeant. And that was one of those, like, in the military, at a certain point, you realize how much you can swing your dick. And I had a massive 06 dick that I could swing that was less than 100 meters away and was perfectly fine sitting on the hood of these guys' Humvees. And they just got so mad. It's so satisfying to watch somebody who outranks you realize they've been bested by you. God, it was just, I was fucking high on that feeling of these two fucking first lieutenants, man. And they were a little older, so they were probably prior service, and I'm sure they had seen some shit in their day and everything. And they didn't want to deal with my bullshit. And I was like, look, if you don't want to come through our ECP, go to the road that's right over there. That's, another fucking 100 feet that way. Go to the main hardball road, drive down, and then you'll be able to cut in, and then you'll be at the range that you're looking for. Don't come through here. I know you guys wanted to fucking hot dog through a dirt road. Well, if you want to do that, that's fine. Show me your goddamn cat cards like we're supposed to fucking
it's really
do.
not that hard. Like, the idea of pulling attitude on that kind of shit is such a waste of resources. I was thinking about your story.
How are you a leader and then being upset that, like, we're doing proper training and I'm doing it correctly,
the right
motherfucker?
Thing. I mean, I remember one time, Jesus Christ, when I was in Bolick, like before I even started OBC, we were doing a foot patrol one day, and our platoon instructor was a major, and he was like an armor major, but I mean, he'd been a company commander in the Iraq War and stuff like that. And we were walking, and we were all in kit like we were supposed to, and he was out there, in his patrol cap and like an equipment vest, a flick, but not like no armor, no weapon, no helmet and shit. Because I mean, we're training, he's the trainer. So we're walking, and one of at the fob we're at for the training, like one of the platoons is on fob security, or the company's is on fob security. So it's a whole different unit. And one of the guys is out there doing gate guard or whatever, and he sees this guy and he sees the gold, and he thinks it's a second lieutenant. He's like, oh, what, you just not feeling up to carrying a ruck today? Thinking he was talking to a second lieutenant. He's talking to a major. We kept walking. You could hear our major's voice for a long fucking time talking to this guy. She'd be like, are you really so fucking stupid? Have you really been in the army for less than a day to the point that you can't fucking guess that when the other guy wearing gold who's not wearing kit might be a fucking major, like just lit this kid up. And it's one of
And
those
the
things where
answer
it's
is,
like,
yeah, motherfucker, I did decide not to wear a ruck today. The fuck are you gonna do about it?
yeah, deal with it. Yeah, exactly. You know what? Like, I make my own rules around here. I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where lieutenants do dumb things, and I've gotten yelled at and blown up because I made stupid mistakes. And like I said, I mean, life goes on. The thing about it is with a lieutenant is that you're a higher profile. All eyes are on you, and when you fuck up, people know about it. And so you got to have thick skin about it. But also, like, don't, the thing about it is that if this guy made a mistake, that was a thing where he was trying, he just sucked at his job and he failed. Like, people can work with that. But when you do something gratuitous and stupid that's cruel and punching down for no reason, people are way less inclined to cut you any slack because there's no, there's a joke, right? The Joes will tell these jokes all the time, like, what's the difference between a private first class and a second lieutenant? You know this one, Francis?
Yeah, the private first class has been promoted 2 more times.
Exactly, but there's another version of this joke that I think is better. What's the difference between a second lieutenant and a private first class? A second lieutenant still asks questions like what and why.
Well, and that's good. We need them to ask that question, but you don't want the private first class asking that shit.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing about it is that also that here's the thing, right? When you're a platoon leader, you're in charge, but also you're the maneuver element getting controlled by much larger maneuver elements. If they want to make you go do some shit, you don't really have much of a say in it. And I mean, that's one of those lessons you got to learn. That sometimes you luck out. Sometimes, I just recall going out and doing a patrol where we left in the middle of the night and we were out all day. And then we got we came up on a command at IED that the triggerman had run off, and we brought in EOD, and it took fucking hours for them to finally control this thing because it kept not completely going off, and it was like 500 pounds of homemade explosives. And then we were like, well, at least we can go back to the fob, we can refit for 8 hours, maybe get a little bit of sleep, even if it's just like drink some Gatorade and sleep in the fucking MRAPs and fuel up. We can at least refit really quickly. And we were literally within sight of the fucking fob gate. And then we get a call that one of our units found like a fuckload of RPG heads in a cache that was like in a well. And they're like, yeah, these look old, but I don't know if they're dangerous or not. Like, can we get EOD to come out and destroy these? So guess what we did? Can you guess?
Had to take EOD out?
Turn the fuck around and go right the fuck back out. And yep, so that was like, yeah, I think we were on for like 48 hours straight, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that bad, honestly. And we were in vehicles, which is better than being dismounted and doing that shit for damn sure. So it's not that bad, but it's one of those things where I feel like having the experience of doing the shit for real, you learn that there's certain things where you're not going to win. You're not going to have a good day. All you can do is try to like minimize the suck that trickles down to your guys. And you got to have a decent amount of judgment for that. And if you have such poor judgment that you're like, I'm going to make a Holocaust joke on TikTok for no reason, yeah,
you got bad decision making skills, and I don't want you.
Exactly.
I don't want you around.
And you might be fucking badass at PT. You might just smoke the shit out of PT. But the thing about it is that for all of the bullshit that people are always going to tell you, but you won't be a platoon leader unless you have a 300. Man, I never got a 300 in the PT test. I'm not that good at push-ups. I would get 270, 280, 290. I think 296 was my highest PT test score. And when I was a second lieutenant, I was in good shape. But I mean, like I said, I didn't take the PT test very often because we didn't do record PT tests that often because we were getting ready to deploy. And honestly, you do one, it's like, fuck it, it's good. Just accept those results and go. But people always want to tell you that you have to be like this massive, massive PT stud. You got to be better. I would say be better than the average of your platoon, but your platoon average is probably going to be about 240 because I mean, soldiers aren't always in great shape.
Because you got people like me hitting 205 and being like, yeah, that's fine.
And so the point I'm making here is that people have this notion that to be a lieutenant, to be a platoon leader, to be an officer, you have to be just ultra marathon or super fucking insanely in good shape, which can help for certain things, but it's not the only thing. And this guy made the crucial mistake of apparently thinking that the job of being an officer is to be in incredible shape and have great hair and that nothing else matters. And sadly, he has to learn that no, that is not, in fact, what they want from you. Get me on this fucking thing talking about officer professional development, and I sound like I liked being in the Army. Jesus Christ. Francis, this is a mind fuck, man. You made me slip back into captain mode. I'm gonna be five finger pointing everywhere.
I'm in NCO mode. We're both in that. Just because what happens is we're both seeing a young soldier who needs guidance. And at any point in time, one of us maybe would have been able to give him the guidance to not do this. Or to just be like, oh, you've got 3 million TikTok fans. Ah, that's cool. You're not saying anything real fucking stupid on that, right? Like, you're not making any like racist jokes, right? And he'd be like, no, of course not. And, maybe that would have saved him. Maybe it wouldn't have. But, it's just that sometimes when you see an investment like that, you see somebody who's just like, maybe they could have been halfway decent at this. Maybe you could have molded them into a good soldier. And maybe not, probably not. But, you feel like, I feel like a lot of people who are in leadership roles and who have been in the military for a long time look at that, and it's not necessarily fuck him, get rid of him. It's what could we have done to make that better? And that's always going to be ingrained in not only a soldier but a leader. And not to get all self-help book about it, or read my autobiography of the time I was a Green Beret PAO or whatever. But that's what I saw with it. I saw that, and it just has that like, fuck, man, maybe I could have changed him, Nate. Maybe I could have been there, and I could have just been like, hey, maybe don't post that. Maybe don't post for a minute. Maybe run that by somebody. Maybe be like, hey, is this Holocaust joke that I made funny? And somebody be like, yeah, I mean, one, Ash isn't a Pokemon, but two, I wouldn't put that out on. I wouldn't be dumb enough to put that up on, on TikTok or anything. Run it by Marine Todd first. If Marine Todd would be like, yeah, it's fucking funny, but I wouldn't post that, then don't post it. Too easy. It's done right there. So that's how I see it. I see it as we could have done something, could have been done, some sort of training, some sort of or just some sort of like flick in the back of the ears, like, what the fuck's the matter with you? Don't do that. And then maybe it's like, oh, don't do that. Don't be racist online. Huh? There's an idea. I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, I have no idea. I think it sucks that that I if this guy thinks that shit's funny, then there's other racist shit that he thinks funny too, and like his Jewish soldiers, his black soldiers, his gay soldiers, his Hispanic soldiers, his women soldiers, like, are all going to suffer because this guy's a fucking dumbass. He's a Barstool Sports guy, and that sucks and it's bad. I don't know. I don't really have any other take for it other than what you said. It's a thing that should have been corrected and could have been corrected, but when you have social media, you can show your ass in a huge way instantaneously, and there's no taking it back. So, lesson learned, never, ever post. Unless you're willing to go all the way, like our hero and moral compass and our guidepost in posting, Spencer Rapone, RIP to a real one, who's still alive. He's just not posting anymore. And there's nothing to say about it.
I think really what it comes down to is be
punch
funnier.
Up, be funnier. Don't make fucking Holocaust jokes. You're not Mel Brooks. Stop. And just be smart about this shit.
If that kid had come out and done a TikTok video about like how his major looks like me, I posted yesterday about I was wondering about one of my old drill sergeants who looks like Professor Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb. Do that. That's funny. I mean, maybe that's funny or not, but that's funnier than making a Holocaust joke. Talk about how your major looks like a random Nickelodeon or Disney Channel supervillain. That's going to go a lot better, and most of us will probably ignore it, I guess. I don't know.
Anyway, I wanted to segue into the bonus, because this bonus preview features me and Milo Edwards from the Trash Future podcast discussing the 1977 Richard Attenborough film A Bridge Too Far, as well as other British World War II movies, and the psychotic conviction that everything is Dunkirk, everything is the Blitz, and that both the Blitz and Dunkirk were successes of government policy, and just the general British take on World War II. We cover a lot in our slightly rambling hour. So I'm going to play a little bit of that, and if you're interested in it, you can get it on the Patreon at $3 a month, because it's a film review, so that's a slightly lower tier. So take a listen to this.
There's something beautiful about the way that this film just like completely avoids attempting to be like true to life in any sort of way. Like all of the British officers are like completely absurd. Which is saying something, because I'm pretty sure the real people that they're based on are also quite absurd. Like, certainly Sean Connery's character, Major General Urquhart, who is like a real figure from the history of the parachute regiment, and is like, by all accounts, a nutter. Like a good Wikipedia read. But Sean Connery does play him almost like James Bond levels of like. My favorite moment in the film is when like Sean Connery and a couple of the other British officers take over some house in like just a normal street somewhere in Holland, and they're like spreading out a map on the table, and then some German soldier appears in the window, and Sean Connery, without looking, just turns around and like shoots him through the window with his pistol, and then like calmly goes back to the map. And it's
somehow they're able to hide in like a neighboring house, and the Germans don't just show up and burn every house down like they would obviously do.
Actually, and on the subject of the Germans, we are, of course, dealing with a Nazi general archetype with our Nazi general. He is certainly the like, you see, Herr Kapitän, we are not all barbarians. That's the...
Yeah, but there's a
He's
scene.
always drinking like claret out of a fucking decanter.
So when I watched this film, the version I had partial subtitles. It was missing a bunch of subtitles for the Dutch and the German parts. And I don't speak Dutch at all. I do speak German, but not super well. But I was able to make out most of what was going on. You know, when somebody's talking about like die Brücke, like I know he's talking about the bridges. But there is a part where, you know, basically the general is telling them something, and then he just says, "Vergessen Sie bitte nicht meine Zigarren." And it's like, he's basically saying, don't forget my cigars, because it's so important that I travel in style everywhere I go, that in a way, there's this film
Dudes
kind of...
Rock Nazi edition.
Exactly. Got to have a stogie, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we laughed.
The general is played by a very young Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, I'm in the Wehrmacht, but I smoke stogies, and no one can stop me because I'm ballsy.
There was a thing about Parliament buildings like rated based on their, you know, their architecture that was on Twitter the other day, and of course the Hungarian one won the competition because all the fucking fash and the trad casts voted for it because they love traditional architecture so much.
We love Hungary, a normal country where nothing bad ever happens.
This building looks like Dracula's castle, but it was built in 1904. But the thing that made me laugh about it was they were so dedicated to the they were so dedicated to the art of stogies that there's literally a section in the Parliament where members of Parliament, there's numbered metal trays, like half moon shaped trays with numbers, where people can lay their stogie down to not take it into the voting chamber because they don't want to, they don't want to lose their cigar, because that was so important at the time that one always has a cigar that one is smoking. So.
I mean, to be fair, like, why wouldn't they have just kept smoking it in the Parliament chamber? It's fucking 1904. No one gives a fuck.
I mean, apparently this is just not done in Hungary in 1904 when you're part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. I don't know, man.
That was probably like an extremely peak time to live if you had money. Like between the turn of the century and the First World War. Like, what a quality period where you could just do literally anything.
Just fucked up on laudanum and like Biarritz every summer. Just having
you can just like buy cocaine at the pharmacy. Like
you could buy these champagne bottles that are named after biblical figures that no one remembers. Because like, yes, you have the bottle, you have the Magnum, which is a double bottle. But have you ever heard of like a Jeroboam or a Nebuchadnezzar or like these fucking like 8-liter bottles of champagne? Like you can still buy them, but who the hell buys them? You know what I mean?
You're constantly smoking a cigar. You die of mouth cancer at 43.
One of Cynthia's friends is French, and her family is from like Bordeaux. And she one time was just like, I'm just going to live tweet this dinner we're having for New Year's. And it was like a 9-course meal with everything had alcohol with it. It was like oysters everywhere. And it was like, that's the subdued version of what a normal person's just like regular summer day would be in 1904. That would have whipped ass.
8 different sizes of deer stuffed inside one another.
It sucks when you get drafted to fight in the Great War and everything like that. But up until that point, it would have whipped ass.
Moment. Yeah.
So one of the things you pointed out there that I feel like is worth mentioning is that the German generals in this film really do correspond to like that taxonomy of German generals that are so popularized in British cinema. And similarly, I think the portrayal of the British Army completely elides the fact that a lot of people knew this is a fucking stupid idea, and it's only being done because Montgomery wants to one-up Patton. And it wound up being this disaster. And I read an article recently by the historian Anthony Beevor, who's a British historian, and he basically commented that is so challenging to do any significant scholarship about Market Garden because as long as anyone is still alive who was in leadership, which now I think most people have died. You basically, presumably, or if they haven't, they're they're like almost 100 years old.
Even then, they would have had to have been too young to really be in leadership, because they're like, most of the people involved in planning it would have been like in their like at least mid 40s at the time.
So we're basically in a situation where from 1944 onward until basically now, you couldn't really do any serious scholarship because of like the weight of the mythology behind it. That no one wanted to admit how much of a fuck up it was and how incompetent so much of the leadership was.
Yeah.
And famously, in this article I read, I'll link to it in the show notes. It was in the New York Review of Books. Anthony Beevor says that John Keegan, the historian, basically said in like the 1970s, he's like, I will never attempt any serious scholarship about Market Garden ever again until everyone involved who was in leadership has died, because he basically had a position that he did at a conference about something to do with like bad decision making. I don't know the particulars. And some famous general basically choked him out. Like,
what?
Yeah, he basically assaulted him in the corridor and like started fucking choking him. Like,
very normal stuff.
Because, like I said, there's so much mythology about that. Like, Jerry just got the best of us, when it's like, actually, it was a complete fucking. People knew it was going to be a fuck up to begin with. It was such an absurdly overambitious plan. It hinged on so many things going
Old
right.
Men and boys.
Exactly. So the whole point being that they thought that I would imagine that people listening know what Operation Market Garden is, but just in case we haven't lost you, if you don't know what the fuck it is, as we're like 15 minutes into this episode, basically an airborne insertion plus an armored column movement trying to seize the bridges over the Rhine in Holland to liberate Holland from the Nazis and provide basically an axis of advance for
straight into southern Germany,
straight into the Ruhr Valley of Germany, basically into western like northwestern Germany. And so the idea being that famous last words, the war will be over by Christmas. The idea being, if they could basically gain access to these bridges and hold these bridges, then they would be able to puncture through into Germany, and the Wehrmacht would basically collapse. And at that point, they would just be mopping up. This obviously presupposed a lot, and what wound up happening was it failed, and then the Germans counterattacked in the winter of 1944 and almost seized Antwerp, and that then required a whole additional autumn and winter and spring of fighting. People were still, fighting and, what would you describe this as? Force on force, like conflict, fighting was happening even as early on the Western Front as like early April 1945.
Yeah.
The idea was it would be done by the end of 1944. So one of my favorite historians, commentators, authors on the war was actually an infantry platoon leader in World War II on the Western Front, or the European theater. He was a guy named Paul Fussell, and he was wounded in like the end of March 1945 in the Hürtgen Forest. And he said in one of the books he wrote on the topic that like when he would tell people, they asked, "How did you get wounded?" And he was like, "My entire platoon got wiped out in the Hürtgen Forest in the end of March 1945. And they would say, I had no idea people were still fighting and dying at the end of March 1945. And it's like, yeah, man, it went on for a fucking while. And one of the reasons why it went on was the failure of Market Garden. Now, people have covered this. Obviously, Band of Brothers covered this a lot. But this film, I think, served as a sort of like myth-making apparatus that like, oh, it was just all a big cock-up as opposed to a terrible plan.
Yeah, the sort of intertextuality between this and Band of Brothers is very interesting, I think, because there's that episode of Band of Brothers, which is they have their Market Garden episode, which is about the 101st Airborne operations in Market Garden, but then they have the episode about the Easy Company going and rescuing the Parachute Regiment, or the British Airborne, as they're called at the time, the Red Devils, getting them across the river, basically, because they were stranded on the far side of the river, and basically they had to do a boat. This is covered in A Bridge Too Far as well, the sort of boat escape. But the 101st also played a role in that, basically bringing these guys back. Yeah, and I think there's this kind of I mean, obviously, like the film is just like a total myth-making exercise, as you described, but it describes this kind of like what I have kind of gathered to be this sort of particular old-fashioned British military approach, which is to sort of go in with an attitude of like,
well, they're bloody top blokes. They'll do a bloody good job. You know, they sort of. We don't really need to think about the logistics because they're bloody top hole lads. You know,
And so they love just like,
Radios don't need to work. It's no problem at all.
yeah, they love David Baddiel, field commander.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for being Patreons. If you are, thank you for giving us your support in whatever way possible. Don't post, your dumb racist stuff online. Keep it to yourself and don't be racist. Really is where you should be with that. You can follow me at Army Strang. Follow Nate at In These Deserts. Follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. Check out the store. We got new stuff in the store. We've got a transgender AK-47 pin, and $5 from every purchase of that goes to Trans Lifeline. So check it out, give it to charity, and definitely whatever ways that we can continue to make this a better world. Let's try to fucking do that. Otherwise, you have dumb lieutenants saying dumb shit. So, but other than that, Nate, we'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Have a good one.